Technology is here to stay, and more importantly, technology is an integral part of our daily lives, whether at work or at home. But technology, especially at a young age, has many problems, such as technology addiction, leading to poor social skills and computer alter egos, or cyberbullying, predators, and a lot of bad information, such as pornography or violence, that can shape our child's views of life. As stated in my last episode, episode 10, parents have a vital role in raising their children, and part of that is introducing and managing technology to their children. But parents are not alone. There are tools, techniques, and other parents who can help us in parenting with technology. Hello, everyone. Today's episode is about parenting and technology, and talking specifically about using policies and other parents to help with this technology challenge. It is important to understand that as parents, we cannot do it alone. As the saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child. I will discuss the idea of having a family technology policy, which provides an easy way for parents to build a technology culture in a family. Lastly, we will discuss how to keep vigilant in this technology challenge. As parents, we can become saints by simply growing in virtue and holiness in this technology challenge. Not theoretical, but practical. Real-life Catholic advice from Practical Catholic.
Welcome to another episode of Practical Catholic with David Cease. Practical Catholic is a spiritual coaching show to help you find peace, love, and joy in family and work life. We are here each and every week to help you grow spiritually, to become successful in this life, and to be a saint for the life after.
My story begins about 6 years ago. I wanted to create a core values in my business. It was something that everyone said it's very important for your business to grow into the next level, grow to the next level. So I poured in a lot of time and effort into creating this core values. I had 4 employees that were there, including myself, and we had a committee, and we were doing it as a committee-based, and I kind of led the committee. And but majority of that came from them, and so they developed it. When I calculate the cost of creating these core values, I calculated that it cost me really around $51,200. Think about that. So in essence, I basically spent $51,200 in creating these core values. And when the committee was finished and he submitted the paperwork to me, I looked at the core values. And I basically ripped it up and threw it in the garbage can. And the reason why was out of a few of the core values that they came up with, it was just bad. I can't express how bad it was. So I was very disappointed, and I just couldn't crack the code on how to create a core values. And then several years later, I went to this really good program called 10,000 Small Businesses that was run. And so I got there. It was a totally free process. Nothing, you didn't have to pay for anything. In fact, they paid for my travel and everything. So it was a really neat program. So, one of the course there was called Building a Culture. And so, I was thinking, wow, how are we going to do this and building your core values? So we had an hour's worth of courses, listening to them, building a culture, creating core values. And I remember even raising my hand and saying, this is all fine and dandy, but how are we going to do this? I spent, lots of money and people's time creating these core values, which I did not like. So later we did an exercise. And the exercise was probably about 15, 20 minutes long. Didn't take that long. And the lady who was teaching this course says, I want you to pick out 3 employees that you think are your best employees. Okay, so I listed 3 of my employees, and I wrote down what their qualities, why I think they were my best employees and everything. And so that's what we had to do. We had to pick out 3 people's, and then what their value was, or what their quality actually was, why. And as I did that, I came back and I noticed that there was consistency in their in what I liked about them. They were hard workers, they were dependable, blah, they were proficient at what they did and all these things that, they were bold and stuff. And so the woman who taught this course said, you're going to see a common thread amongst these three people. Those are the values that you want. And she proceeded to say that the values aren't based off of committee, okay? Because they're just going to create these artificial values. But the values must come from the leader. The leader must be, the person who creates those values, because he or she is the person that will need to enforce it and believe in it. If you don't believe in it, if you don't have any type of understanding of those values, then you're never going to enforce it. And if you don't enforce it, then what's the sense on having those values? And I knew that because after spending $51,000 creating my own values through a committee, I didn't believe in these values. Oh yeah, maybe one or two of them, but majority of them didn't resonate with me. And I could not enforce them. Because why? Because honestly, I would fall short of some of those values. You see, so the values that I needed for my business has to come from me. And why? Why is that? Well, first of all, values are a top-down. That's what it is. A committee is really bottom-up. So the values have to come from the top and enforced from the top and believed by the top, because values have to be believed in. And if you don't believe in those values, well, then you're never going to enforce it. And it's not going to be, it's just going to be just a word, or just, it's just kind of, do what I say, but not what I do. And that's not a really good way of running a business. So it has to be top down. They have to be believed by the management, by the leaders. Number two, the reason why you need to, come from the leaders is because, the leader, and especially me as a small business, I worked in this industry. I worked in this industry. I know what the values are that made this business thrive in this industry. Okay? Because core values in a business are different in different industries. Okay? We need a lot of problem solvers. We need a lot of go-getters and people who are bold, because we're a consultancy company. But you see, if we're a research company, let's say we're a pharmaceutical company, we don't need, in essence, these fluid, dynamic people. You might want someone who's more educated. Value in education, value in research, value in patience. But you see, the values, whatever the core values are going to depend on the leader. And in this case, I had a lot of experience in my industry and what type of qualities I really needed in a people. So again, it's different for different industry, and that's why it's important that the leader is the one who develops these core values, and why the core values are industry specific in essence. Okay. And there might be some common thread on all industries, of course, like truthfulness or dependability. But then there's other qualities that wouldn't be necessary in different industries. Okay? The other reason why the leader has to be the one to bring it is because they have to believe in it. The belief has to be so strong that you have to live, breathe, and eat that belief. Okay? That leader has that. He knows, or she knows, what makes this company a success. And that's what happens. Okay? If you look at all the great businesses like Amazon and even Facebook and Google and all those others, you'll research that they do have a certain culture. They have a certain value, and it came from the leaders. That's what it came from. It came from the founding leaders of what's going on. So it is believed in. Once it's believed, the leader will enforce it. If a leader doesn't believe in any core values, they will not enforce it, because either A, it's something that they can't even keep. Okay? If it's important to the leader, they will make sure that they uphold those values in themselves and in their people. So this is how, and I was just shocked how this woman was able to give this simple little exercise to create a core value. That's what it is. It's a simple little exercise to create a core value. And those core values are important in our business. Why? Because that's how we build our culture. That's where everything flows from, okay? Whether it be hiring and firing, whether it be, our manual, it seeps through every part of the business, okay? And so the biggest thing, though, is building a culture, all right? So you might be wondering, what were my core values? I have 7 of them, okay? 7 of them are honesty. 2 is doing your best. 3 is dependability. 4 is dedication. 5 is boldness. 6 is a can-do attitude. And 7 is a customer service. Those I strictly uphold to. And I believe in those. Okay? Because why? Because I know that is the person I am, and that is the type of person that I would want other people to be. And so it's easy for people to look at me and my core values because those core values are a description of me, and hence what made this business into a success. And now I want to make sure it continues by explicitly showing those core values and then hiring based off those core values and then mentoring people based off of those core values. I have an onboarding process, and in that onboarding process, I spend at least a day or 2 just on those core values because they mean a lot, because they are what is part of our culture. Now, those core values could change based off of your industry. These are ours as a small IT consultancy firm. And so when we hire and or even when we let people go, you're not a fit in our business because you don't fit the culture, all right? If you don't have a can-do attitude, I'm sorry, you can't fit here, all right? If you're constantly negative and why you can't be done and you don't get the job done, that's a bad performance, okay? You can't be afraid. That's why being bold is so important, all right? You might say fortitude, but bold is different than fortitude. Bold is the ability to act, okay? We might have fortitude, strength, right, and courage or maybe even patience. But sometimes we fear making decisions. Bold is about action. That's why we chose the word bold. I want them to act, never to just be thinking, right? That they're dedicated, that they give 110%, all right? I know a lot of people who they do, I do. Sometimes I work, 70 hours if I need to. But the dedication is there, all right? So today we're going to be talking about what we're going to talk about is really building a family technology culture. It's important to understand that. And it's important to understand because, we have cultures that we bring into our families many a times, whether we're German, Italian, or Korean or Asian. And we bring those naturally into in our family. But we need to also bring in an IT culture, a culture of using the IT software and hardware for the family. And so we're going to build that culture. And today we're going to be talking about creating a policy, having other parents to help us out, enforcing that policy, maybe being in sync with that policy, as well as how to stay vigilant. In a business, we have this, managers and leaders have to stay vigilant and kind of enforce those cultural behaviors. We don't have the luxury of firing people or letting people go, or in some cases even hiring. Children come into our lives with whatever temperament that they have, or and those types of things. But one thing we do have to understand is no matter what temperament our children have or born with, we encourage the virtues so that we build those that family culture. That is the essence of what we're trying to do. And in this case, we're trying to build an IT culture, okay? So what, is this, before we talk about that is, last episode, we talked about the vital role of parents in this IT challenge. Today, we're going to continue that role, but with more policies and procedures, and also kind of having a village to help you out and how to be vigilant. we're going to focus on that, and we're going to focus on, the role of technology itself, how technology can help us. Okay, that's going to be next episode, but this episode is more about policies and a village. So what's the zoom out main point? All right, the zoom out main point is we can start building a technology culture by providing a policy and bringing parents by sharing that policy so that a more technology-friendly culture can be built. So in essence, what we're trying to build is an IT culture. That's what we're trying to build through policies and through other families, okay? This is very important because, in a lot of ways, children are going to grow up and become adults. And right now, I don't know if there's any company out there that doesn't have a corporate IT policy and procedures. You don't have to, work for Google or Facebook or Amazon or anything like that. Go to any company, okay? I don't care if it's an insurance company. I don't care. They're very tight on, information sharing. They have tight security. There's a lot involved. And so there is a policy. You'll probably have to sign, documents that say we will uphold the policies of the IT infrastructure. So this is not going to be foreign for kids because you're, in essence, teaching them how to grow up and also behave in a corporate environment or in the future environment where there's going to be a lot of IT. And again, IT is booming. It's not like it's shrinking. So you're going to be ahead of the game, in essence, when you do that. So we're trying to build this culture of safe environment with technology by bringing other parents and having a policy, okay? What's the zoom in point of view? The zoom in point of view is we're going to specifically talk about creating a policy and having other parents to come together and maybe helping you enforce that policy and implement that policy, and also staying vigilant because technology is ever changing and different children, some children are really not technical, or tech savvy. But if you have some of my kids, they're extremely tech savvy. And they become a little hacker in your life, okay? So you got to be vigilant as well. Okay, so last episode, we talked about, that technology is not evil. It's a morally neutral item, but it could be used for evil or for good. It's funny. I teach a course on cyber called Cyber Patriot. It's a competition in which my kids and a couple of other kids are involved with, and I'm the coach for it. And it's really interesting because we're teaching our kids about protecting our technology assets. But in the process of doing this, they're actually learning how to hack into a system. And it's funny because I have to actually teach them a course on ethics. And one of the things that we talk about is called black hat and white hat. The black hat are hackers, bad hackers, and the white hats are good hackers. And you might say, what are good hackers? Well, good hackers are people who actually hack into a computer system to show the vulnerabilities of the system. The companies actually hire hackers, okay, to hack into their system to find vulnerabilities. They're called white hats, so they're actually hacking for a good purpose. As opposed to black hats are bad hackers who are actually hacking into your system to take property or assets, intellectual assets, and or do some kind of ransomware or something like that. So that black hat and white hat comes from the Lone Ranger, where the good guys always wore white hats, and the bad hats, the bad people always wore the black hats. So so there is this caution out there. So technology is ever changing, and that it is not evil, but there are cautions. The cautions are that technology has to be integrated into a child's life with age-appropriate capabilities. That's really the important part. Age-appropriate, okay? Just like movies, right? Why do we have rated G, PG, PG-13, R, X, and XXX, I guess, movies? Because they are age-appropriate, and they also talk about how what these movies provide. You wouldn't want to show and a triple X movie to a 10-year-old or something like that. I don't think that would be appropriate, right? And so it's the same thing. But even more importantly is those ratings like R and G, most of them are wrapped around sexual content, so maybe some violence as well and curse words. But the internet is a free-for-all. It's a free-for-all. It not only has that, but it has things like satanic things. It has predators. You will never see predators in a movie, okay? No movie comes out and starts snatching your kids. So there's more bad information that's out there. Cyberbullying. You're not going to see movies cyberbullying you. So even though we have these ratings in movies, we don't have any of that protection in the computer world, in the technology world. So yes, it's neutral. It's great technology, but also it can be used for evil. And in the cyber world, it is both good and evil are out there. Okay, so and then we also talked about how vital the role is for the parent and how important it is for you to engage in this technology challenge and spend some time there. And so we're great as parents helping our kids in the physical world, but a lot of times we leave the back door open in the cyber world. Okay? And so we want to protect both doors, both the front door and the back door. All right. So let's talk about, a policy. Why do we want to create a policy? Okay? So an IT policy, IT family policy is important for a couple of reasons. Okay? So the first one is it's a way to communicate. To who? We want to communicate to our children and we want to communicate to our spouse. Okay? A lot of times we don't want to, when we live an ad hoc way of existing in IT, what's going to happen is we're going to start making decisions on the fly. And that's really the worst thing that you can do is start making decisions on the fly. Because it's going to be based off of emotions. It's going to be based off of the situation that happens right there. And it's going to create a lot of unrest, honestly. And it could be, in some cases, unfair, right? Maybe you do something for one child, but not the other child, et cetera. So you want to be able to communicate this policy so that your spouse is, in sync. You and your spouse are in sync. Or you want to, and as well as communicate it to your children. So we have policies in our business because it's the same thing. Managers need to be in communication with each other, know what the policies are, and as well as the employees need to know what they're responsible for. So there's no and ifs about it. There's nothing like, oh, I didn't know that, Mom and Dad. I didn't know this, because it's like, no, that's our policy. This is what we do. So adjudicating someone who broke the rule or whatever becomes a lot easier. It just becomes easier. Like, hey, you're not supposed to be on the internet after 10 o'clock. So why were you on there? Well, blah, blah, blah. So you know when to be vigilant, when not to, in essence, in some cases, right? They're supposed to be, they could be on the internet at a certain time, but they can't be at other times, okay? So communication, it facilitates that very, very importantly. It allows you to enforce it very easily. The second is it sets expectations, okay? So, part of raising children is setting expectations. Hey, we can't do this, we can't do that, or we're allowed to do this here. So kids will know when they can use the computer, when they can't. What they can do and what they can't do. That's the expectations. And, setting expectation is very, very important. And if you don't set expectations correctly, people will get disgruntled. It really will. Okay. As I said, I opened up a shop, and I already set the expectation they cannot enter this area of the room with their iPhones, and they were okay with it. When I hired these people, I said to them, look, there's an area, in majority of your time when you're working here, you will not have access to your iPhone. Is that a problem? And they said no. Why? Because they needed a job. And I'm not trying to bullying them, but the secure area that we have is very secure. And I said, because it has to, there can't be any information leaving this area We don't even allow iPhones to be in this area. Is that okay? And they said yes. So we set that expectation. So when they came to work, as soon as they saw that line that says, from here on, you cannot have your iPhone, they checked in their iPhone. And there is no disgruntledness or any anger. Yes. Can they say, all right, on my break time, I'm going to walk out of that, secure area and go into, a place where I can use the phone? Yeah, they can do that. All right. So setting that expectation up front for your spouse as well as your children. Okay. The third is training them for the future. Okay. As I said, in the corporate world, especially in the corporate world, there's going to be an IT policy. Information nowadays is a commodity. It is something that is of high value. All right. And that's what I'm an information technologist. And I'm telling you that more and more policies are coming down, and you're going to see even more. Ransomware is really, really going rampant. And people are losing. I think it's right now. Currently this year, they made $4 billion. Just think about it. Ransomware made $4 billion just this year. And it's a game. There are so many tools out there that make ransomware easy to do, very, very easy to do. And so any high schooler can actually create ransomware right now. There's just so many tools that you can literally be a high school student and pretty much do some ransomware, hold hostage some data, ask them for $100,000, $200,000. It's very easy. Basically, what you do is you basically research how much a company's worth. Okay, so let's say it's a $20 million company, and then you lock their data, and then you set it about maybe 1% of what their net value is. $100,000. It's easier for them just to pay the $100,000 than to try to unhack it and bring in FBI to try to figure it out and everything else. No, they're just going to pay the $100,000. That's all they're going to do. Imagine that. A high school student making $100,000 in a blink of an eye. So that's why corporate people are right now spending lots of money on security. So policies and procedures are very, very important to them right now. And it will be as time, even more. So you're training them for the future. So this is not alien in any way. This is going to be the wave of the future. Okay. Number 4, policies can be enforced by technology. Believe it or not, there's a lot of policies. All right. And we do this in the industry, in our industry, is that, once you have a policy, believe it or not, you can actually use technology to enforce those policies. Okay. So, for example, we have a policy that between 5 and 8 o'clock, there is no internet allowed. None. No internet allowed at all. And so the easiest way to implement that is we do it through a router, and we just shut the internet down between 5 and 8 o'clock. All right? 5. And it brings us a level of peace. Why does it bring a level of peace? Because we know at that point they can't do anything because we bring down the router. And technology does it automatically for us. We don't need to have, we don't have to do it. So we can make the technology a bad guy and not you. And really, it's amazing because my kids just accept it. 5 o'clock, done. All right, no more internet. And they'll remind me. Sometimes I'll be like, hey, they'll ask me a question about something. I say, why don't you just, look at Google and check that out? And they're like, Dad, it's 6 o'clock. We don't have any internet. And then I'll be like, oh, okay. So once you have a policy, you can figure out, hey, can the computer system do this for us automatically? Okay. And that will greatly enhance your ability to enforce those policies. Okay. So, they know what the consequences are. Maybe, they'll at least know what's right or wrong if you have a policy. But a lot of kids sometimes get into trouble because they really don't know what is right and what is wrong. It's the accidental thing, So, by having a policy, you at least show them that there is a right or wrong. Now, in that policy, you can explain to them what the consequences are. We don't do that, but you can do that, and a lot of Businesses, they will. They'll say if you release information with other people, it's an instant termination, right? You can't terminate your kids, but there could be other consequences. But at least they'll know what's right or wrong. All right. So the policies. So let's talk about policies. How should we create these policies? Okay. Well, one of the ways to build it is just kind of like building our values. First of all, these policies have to come from the top. It has to come from the parents, okay? You can't enforce a policy if you don't believe in it, okay? And if you don't believe in those policies, then you might as well not even implement them or do that. They have to have some form of buy-in with the parents, okay? And I'll give you a prime example. We've made our fair share of mistakes. When we were homeschooling for the first time, my wife wanted to incorporate laptops. And, so we brought in laptops. At that time, it was only my older son, Joseph, with my other second son, Joshua. And they had laptops. And one of the things, we didn't have a policy at the time, but, one of the things that she said was, well, I'm going to allow them to have their computer in their room. And I had read, books about like never do that, never allow them to have the computer in their room. And I kind of disagreed. I said, look, I think we should have it, they have to have it in the public areas. And no, my wife was kind of insistent. And so she did until we found some bad information on one of the laptops. And we said, we can't do that anymore. And we brought them back in. So sometimes it is a lesson learned, but why did I allow that to happen? Because I can't enforce something that I'm not here. My wife is the one who homeschools. I don't homeschool. I work. So sometimes, you have to allow that to happen, okay? And we could be vigilant as well. And we picked it up very quickly. But we do have to understand that the values that we build are the ones that have to be enforced. And typically, the ones that are enforced are the ones that whoever is the leader is the one who's going to has to believe in it. So in this case, my wife has to believe in it because most of the time I'm at work and she's the one that has to enforce it. So I'm not saying that like in this case I'm at work that they have to agree 100%, but it does have you do have to kind of acquiesce to the person who has to enforce it. So creating a technology policy has to come from the leader. Okay, I would sit down and say, what are certain values do you have that you want to have in your own family? Is it faith-based? Is it based off of other things? I think what you should do is really look at some children that you've really, not your own children, but let's say your, neighbor children or whatever, and look at what values that you really like about certain of their kids. Maybe they're happy-go-lucky. Maybe they're polite. Maybe whatever they are. And then figure out those values. And then once you figure out those values, you can then see how technology can either enhance those values or detract from those values. Okay? So, for example, let's say you see, a child who's always kind of communicative to your parents and all the other stuff. You might want to have less technology, okay, or a technology that's away from entertainment, games or something like that. So you can build your technology based off of certain values that you want to bring and incorporate into your family, and doing that. In our family, we actually, we really, really like technology. We're a very technology-friendly family. I would probably venture to say that out of most of the homeschool, I would say 99% of my homeschooler community, we're probably the most advanced in technology. I can only think of like maybe 2 or 3 that are equal to or maybe a little bit more advanced than we are. But we are, because we are my wife is a computer science major. I'm a computer science major. So we're very savvy on computers. I own an IT business. My wife started that with me. So we're very IT friendly. So we want them to know IT. Our value is we want them to understand that IT is a tool for work, a tool for research, a tool more than a tool, and that entertainment is lower than that part of it. Okay, so that's what we emphasize because outside of using it as a tool, you need to go and play. You need to go and play and with other kids outside and do these things. Okay, so understanding your own values and get your spouse involved and figure out what your values are. Here's some examples. You might want to translate your values to technology. Understand if those technology, does the technology enhance or detract from those values? Okay. All right. So let me give you some policies that we have in our own family. All right. As I mentioned before, we have daily no internet time between 5 to 8. Okay. And we use technology to block it. We actually block it. And so we're not the bad guys in there. As mentioned before, we don't allow anyone have mobile phones. Okay. Until their senior year. All right. And even social media. We don't even allow them to have social media until their senior year. Okay. So we'll talk about that in the next episode, why we don't allow these things to occur until the senior year and what are the issues with those devices and everything. Okay. We do have a kids email system where their email is tracked. In other words, we can see their emails as they're coming in and leaving. You'd be surprised, at least our children, they're very innocent and they wind up, saying things or doing things or, that you can glean a lot from reading other people's emails. And you can find and you can catch people. And maybe it's not that it's they themselves, but it could be their friends, like you get an email that says, hey, yeah, next time I'll text you. She's not supposed to have texting. Then that just triggers something like she's able to text. Where is she texting from? All right. So there's a lot of things that you can glean from the communications. I don't mean to be like the CIA or the NSA or something like that, but the NSA and the CIA, they monitor a lot of traffic going in and out, both from phones as well as the internet. So traffic is very important to understand. Okay, and what a kid's email does is that it just facilitates a way that the emails come in. Now the problem is you can really get inundated. I have a lot of kids, and they wind up inundating you. But just you just have to do samplings. That's all. Just check every once in a while what's going on. We have a policy that says you can only talk about technology the first day of the month. This is one of the greatest policies ever. So we have a policy that you can't talk about tech. We call it Tech Day, which is the first day of the month. That's the only day that they can ask for anything, that they request for anything or want anything. Okay. And so outside of that, they can't talk about it. All right. So believe it or not, they really uphold to it until Tech Day occurs, and they're like, "Dad, I want an Xbox," all these things. And a lot of times I'm like, no, but they could talk to me to death about it. And we're like, okay, every day outside of that first month, nope, we're not talking about that. All right. So that's one policy. Another one is no use of technology at functions. Okay. So for example, because we allow them to have it in senior year, we will tell them you can't, pop this thing out in the middle of, let's say, a dance. Let's say they're invited to not a dance, but a family reunion or whatever. No, this is part of that social etiquette that we're trying to teach them, and then we'll try to enforce it in their first year of their freshman year in college as well, just to remind them. But after that, we kind of wean off, and they're a grown adult, they're 18 or older, and those types of things. But a lot of times they're really great. I have now 2 college students, and they manage their phones pretty well, believe it or not. So, but that's because, again, they know how to socialize physically because they didn't have a phone until their senior year. So we groom them very well. So no use using technology at functions. They can be audited at any time. All right. We know their passwords. We know their passwords for everything that we provide for them. No one has. In fact, we create the password. It's ironic. They don't know the password. We do. Our policy is we know the password. They don't. All the way up until college. Once they're in college, then they can make their own passwords, and they have full admin rights. Okay. So because we know their passwords, they can be audited. We can look at everything that's going on. Even in their senior year, when they have their mobile device, we have their passwords. Okay. And they cannot change that password until they go to college. And honestly, some of them even forget to change the password. So that's what happens. Okay. So, it facilitates the ability to audit them. Okay. They can't just create passwords. They're not allowed to. We know the password, so they don't know it, and they can't change it because they don't know their own passwords. We even log them into their computers. Okay. We log them in. We have other software to monitor what they're watching. And we're going to talk about this in the next episode, that the technologies to help, look at what they're doing and with their computers and everything. Okay. We have, we have a policy of docking their phones at home. So we have it that we have these little docking areas where they can recharge. So the benefit is that they're getting recharged, but they put them there. And that every once in a while they can check it, and that they can't bring the phone upstairs because our basement is where they do most of their homeschooling. And the only time that they can check their mobile device is whether they're on their break for for school, or it's their playtime at school, or it's, or outside of, they have some leisure time so that they can do it. But during school, during other times of activity, they can't use their phone. Okay. But we call it docking their phones. Okay. No use of the phone excessively, i.e. the dinner table or other times. This is more for the adults. Okay. Not doing that. I do have problems with that, by the way, but my wife is, she always reminds me not to do that. Okay. And then Sunday we have a policy of unnecessary use of technology until 8:00. All right. So when we say unnecessary, if they have to do homework, that is necessary use of technology, but they're not there to play games or, talk to do various things. So it's unnecessary use of technology. It's up time to play and do everything. In our family, Sunday is a high value time for us. We don't do any work on Sunday. We don't go shopping on Sundays, unless it's very, very necessary. Kids are sick or something like that. But we do not go shopping. We do not, work unnecessarily. So part of that sacredness of Sunday is unnecessary use of technology until 8:00. 8:00, they can go back and use the computer, or Zoom. Okay. Sometimes with the Zoom now, the youth groups are now on Zoom, so that's what happens. But other than that, that's part of it. So those are part of the policies that we have. We have others as well, but those are some things that can help you with those, with at least starting the policies and procedures. Okay. So next we we're going to talk about is it takes a village to bring up children. It really does. So how do we we need to have parents, but if you have a policy, I think most parents would jump on those policies and help out. So what's the role of other parents? Other parents is to get in sync, okay, so that our policies, so that they can try to enforce it with their children. And then it becomes easier when other children are following the similar policies than you are, right? But I think a lot of parents are afraid of talking to other parents and saying, whoa, guys, I don't want to impose anything on your family. But I think a lot of families would be in sync if they just talked about it. So be free and open to other parents and talk to other parents and say, hey, we have a policy in our household. Would you think about maybe enforcing it in your household? And see what they say. They might say no. They might say yes. But if they say yes, you're starting to build a village. You're starting to build that village of friends and your kids' friends. Okay. We're fortunate to be homeschooling, and we belong to a very wonderful homeschool community that, I would say at least 80% of it is adhered to, or at least they want to adhere to. So it's very, very good in the way that it happens. So it's, to have a village is to set some sort of general policy. You want to make sure it helps other parents. It helps them to enforce that policy. So and help you to be vigilant. Okay. So as my last episode, I told you a story about how I always thought my parents were omniscient. And it wasn't that my parents were omniscient. It was the fact that my parents had a good parenting network. They had a village out there. They had other parents that knew me and that would, kind of say, hey, I saw your son at, X, Y, and Z when they weren't supposed to be. So they help you to be vigilant, okay? And they help you to enforce those policies because if for example, if everyone chose to do the docking policy, which is when you come over to our house, you're not allowed to have your phone or not allowed to use it, then it becomes a lot easier for you to send your son or daughter to some house knowing that they're going to be docking their phone so that they have to be forced to talk to each other. They would have to be forced to play some games together that are outside of the computer. So the enforcement becomes easier when other kids are forced to do the same or are following a similar policy. All right. So it's important to understand that if you have this village, if you have other parents, to help you, it really will make your life easier for both being vigilant and enforcing what the policy is by example and by, just simply that it's an extension of your own family's policy. So where do we go wrong? Sometimes we don't want to ask. We don't want to impose on other families. But I think if you send out an email and just said, hey, we're having kind of a crisis in our technology in our family, we would like to have maybe a parenting meeting, right? A parenting meeting in which, you bring maybe the mom, what's amazing is mothers really have a better network than fathers. I mean, even the homeschooling community, the mothers and I think in our community, it's because mothers are the ones who take care of their kids. And so and they're communicative. They're very, very communicative. So I think the initiative is really for the mothers to get together and say, here's a policy. So why don't you create your own policy and do that. But I think we have this fear that we're trying to impose on something, and you're not. You're trying to create a coalition. That's what you're trying to create. So you're not trying to impose. And there could be various little nuances here and there, and that's okay. So you might have one family that might not enforce the iPhone blocking or whatever it is. That's okay. But at least it makes you aware where parents fit and what they're willing to enforce or not enforce. And knowing is half the battle. Okay, so it doesn't have to be a perfect fit. It just says this is a general policy, and then you know where each family kind of fits, and then what the risks are by sending your kids to that family or this family, or what not the risk is, right? So you want to be able to do that. The other thing I think that prevents us from relying on other parents is that sometimes we have a mistrust on other parents' judgments. And you kind of have to trust them. You kind of have to say, well, you know what? She did say that Johnny was on the phone, or whatever. But I think that, I'd rather take a risk in a misjudgment by another parent than not allowing them to be part of the village. Okay. So take that chance. And it's always, you can always take it with a grain of salt as well. When they call you and they say, hey, I saw Johnny using the phone at this time, you can always say, okay. And then confront your son or daughter and say, hey, Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so said that you were on the phone. Well, did you do that? And then try to adjudicate and see what happens. Okay. So, you kind of, and you don't have to play, Mrs. So-and-so is always wrong and, whatever, just adjudicate it objectively. Okay. So, we have to trust other parents. That's the other thing. Okay. So, the next topic I want to talk about is being vigilant. Okay. There's a saying in as a manager and a leader, and it says, you can't hold someone accountable if you can't measure it. So you need to have some form of metrics to hold people accountable, right? So the biggest thing here that we have to understand is to hold people accountable. A policy and a village will not succeed if you can't hold your children accountable. And that's really the essence of being vigilant, is just holding them accountable to what's going on, okay? And, why do we need to be vigilant? It would be great to say, I have a policy, I have all this great technology to help me, and I have vigilant other parents helping me out. And the reason why is because, one is technology changes. I mean, every 6 months, there's something out there that's going to happen, that's going to change the technology. I'm in the IT field, and I don't know how many times when a new patch, what they call like a security patch, is put on a Windows machine, how it breaks other applications. It does that often. And so we have to be vigilant because technology does change, okay? It's ever shifting, okay? So, and because of that, what once was safe could be unsafe, okay? Google does that a lot, or how about Google? A lot of times they'll have an app and then all of a sudden they'll get rid of it. Now you got to figure out another application to replace that, okay? So the technology is always changing, all right? The other is that, some kids are really tech savvy. As I said, I have kids, my second son, he was pretty tech savvy, but, he's probably not as tech savvy as my youngest son, who's now in high school. And I call him my little hacker. And my second son once made a joke. He says, Dad, he could find a way to get through the internet through the heating system. And, I started laughing hysterically because, he could, one time I did get pretty angry at him because he was able to figure out how to get internet access through the Xbox or his computer. And every day, not every day, but at least every month, I feel like I'm playing a cat and mouse game with him. And he's also in my Cyber Patriot competition. So here I am teaching him how to hack. And then other course, I'm telling him, you can't do that. Right. So it's the point I'm getting at is different children are tech savvy. And so if you have someone like my son, you're going to be vigilant every month. Okay, because he knows a way, he researches it, he does it, he goes to other families who might not be tech savvy and researches everything and then comes back and then does. I mean, it's just unfathomable the things that he does. And so we're very, very vigilant. On the other hand, my other kids who are not tech savvy and a little bit more obedient as well, they're just kind of, they do what they're supposed to. Okay, so just be vigilant and understand that it's going to be different for different kids, okay? Don't get angry. I know I did one time because I was playing this cat and mouse game, but now I know to keep playing that game with him. But eventually he'll grow up and he'll come out of it. It's just in this, area, that's what he's doing. Another thing of being vigilant, his irony here is kids typically tell on themselves accidentally, a lot of times and this is why you don't get angry. The reason why you don't get angry is because, my kids, I'll tell them, hey, what did you do today? And they're like, oh, Dad, I was doing this with the computer, and or they're like coming over and they're excitedly showing me something. And I'm just going, well, how did you get access to this area? And then I just look at them, I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. It really is. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, you shouldn't have access to this capability, but somehow you got access to it, right? And then after they're all excited and they tell me everything, then I say to them, oh, by the way, how did you get access to this? And they're like, oh, well, I just did this, this, and this. And you're like, oh, okay. So they do. Sometimes their friends accidentally talk to them. So it's better to be their friend, to hear how they did certain things. And, because they're always excited about something that they did, not realizing that, to get there, they did something wrong. Okay. And this is a great way of figuring it out, how you do it. Okay. All right. I always tell people the number one hackers in the world are your own children. Okay. Your own children, especially my kids. All right. The other thing is, follow your gut instinct. Okay. I don't know how many times my wife and I, we see them. It might not be something we can concretely know that they're doing, but somehow we got this gut feeling like they're into something that, what's going on. Follow your gut instinct, because I would say a good 70% of the time, your gut instinct is correct. Okay? So, for example, like you might have a gut instinct that like maybe they have a texting capabilities somewhere. And then so you just have to research where it is, and then you realize, they're going through, X, Y, and Z or something like that. So it's really, really follow your gut instinct. And then, last two topics I want to talk about is failure as a parent, right? We're going to fail. Right? I'm going to be straightforward, but failure is not failure until you quit. It's just a failure is a way to learn, okay? So understand that we have to balance when we create a policy and when we're trying to be vigilant in a policy, we have to balance between total security and feasibility, okay? I'm going to tell you this right out board. Especially if you have a very tech-savvy young man or woman, you will not be able to be totally secure. You won't, okay? Feasibility. If you're not tech-savvy or not willing to or whatever, do as much as you can, okay? Any little bit of security or feasibility will help greatly in this technology field. Giving up is not is an option. Okay, it's really, really that you should have some form of security and feasibility in there. And I'm going to say, lastly, nothing is 100% fail-safe 100% of the time. So be easy on yourself. All right. Don't beat yourself over the head because they got into this or they got into that. Just you realize that they did, fix it and move on, but don't beat yourself over that because there's nothing that is 100% safe or 100% of the time. Okay. It might be safe for a day or two or an hour or two, but after that, it's not there. And then eventually, when they do grow into an older adults, they have to have their own freedom, the freedom to make their own mistakes through the internet. All right. Those mistakes, though, will be easier to overcome and easier for them to recognize when they get older. It's harder for them when they're younger to recognize that or identify themselves or build even good character, character at that period when all this information is there. So remember, it's age-appropriate capabilities. And so when they grow older, yes, you have to allow them to make their own decisions and move on. But your responsibility is is when they're below the age of 18, and growing, allowing them to grow in that capability. So let's, in conclusion, parenting with technology is very difficult, but we are not alone. With the help of other parents to lead by example, help us to be vigilant, and enforce policies we have developed in our own family, we can build a technology culture both within a family as well as our village. Growing up with technology, parents need to come together and provide a safe technology environment. Remember, as Catholics, our primary responsibility is our children, and so we can become saints by growing in virtue. In the technology challenge is the virtue-building moment to become a saint. Let's end it with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear Lord Jesus, we love you with all our heart, soul, and mind. Help us, strengthen us, that we may be vigilant, that we may be communicative to our spouses, to other parents, to help us form our children. We pray that you, as our Father, parenting us as well as our children, care more about them than we do, that they may enter into heaven, as we pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Thanks for listening to me, David Cease, at Practical Catholic. Please share this podcast to others, especially if they have benefited you. Also, feel free to share any reflections or leave a comment on the podcast, Instagram and Facebook at Practical Catholic, or visit my webpage at practicalcatholic1, that is the number 1.com.
You're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.